Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. I thought I'd do a update for the oil pump, the scavenge oil pump on my Mustang. I get a lot of requests, or ask for information. How well does that pump last? Or, is it still functioning? I'm thinking about getting one. Do you regret relying on a scavenge pump for your street-driven turbo car, etc., etc.? Up until recently, the answer has always been the same. It works great. I have no regrets. Before we get into that, I will say I'm no longer in Nevada. I've since moved to Kentucky. The car hasn't done a whole lot since I've got here. I have made one pass down the track on 6.5 pounds of boost. I ran a 1008 at 135. Turbos aren't even in their efficiency zone just yet, not until about 7-8 pounds. So I know the car has a whole lot more left on the table, since I know these turbos and this engine have made 28-pound pulls on the freeway. Just doing a little roll racing, having some fun in Vegas, but have not turned the turbos anywhere near that high since they've been in this car. That was with the last car. Anyways, let me show you what's going on. Took the car out for a drive yesterday, which was the first time in probably 3 months that the engine had been started. Drive had no problem. Made it all the way back home, and as I'm backing into the driveway, nice and slow, all of a sudden smoke pouring out of both downpipes, and I'm not talking a little bit, I'm talking the entire car was engulfed in smoke. Shut it off immediately, thought, oh my god, I just trashed my motor. And then when the common sense starts kicking in, I realized, how do you trash a motor idling in your driveway after you just went on a drive and everything was fine? Oil pressure is normal, temperature is normal, something's not adding up. But to give you an idea, you can see oil just dripping out of the exhaust system. I've got paper towels jammed in both downpipes to try to absorb the oil. I'm freaking out because I'm like, my whole motor is garbage. What happened? You can see out in the driveway this trail of oil as I'm backing the car in, realizing, you can see oil's been sprayed over here, it's been sprayed on the truck. I did wash it the best I could, but oil was going everywhere. I apologize for the wind. I hope you can hear me. Of course, the day that I'm doing this, it's windy as hell. I'm trying to block it with my body. But anyways, to get it back in the garage, had to start it because the spool doesn't allow you to just push the car and make sharp turns. It had to be started up. So started it back up, fired right up immediately, and had no problems idling with no weird noises, but it was smoking even worse the second time. So really bewildered. A couple of phone calls to friends and a bunch of head scratching. Realized that the oil pump wasn't turning on when I turn on the ignition switch. Just for the record, this pump is tied into my ignition box. Well, the same switch turns on this and the ignition box, although there's different relays and the wiring is completely different. So they're both independent as far as that goes, but they do use the same toggle switch. When I toggle it on, try and do this one-handed, I do apologize. I've already had this open and I put this together backwards, slightly backwards. So let me see if I can zoom this out, make it a little better. That's slightly more helpful. So if it looks like I've already been in here working on it, it's because I have. This isn't a discovery situation right now. It's because I realized I put the bottom half on backwards, and that's why I'm taking it back apart. There we go. This is what the inside of this pump looks like. Pretty decent quality as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm not great with electronics, so if you disagree, that's totally cool. Pull it apart and you'll see where the failure happened. God, it's hard to do one-handed. There we go. Actually, I don't even have to take it all apart because that's how it's supposed to go with this thing on the other side. But let me put the phone down and I will pull it apart with two hands, and then I'll pick back up. Okay, there we go. This is what the pump looks like on the inside. So for those of you on the fence about buying it, it seems like it's a pretty decent quality as far as I can tell. Again, I'm not an expert on electric motors, so maybe somebody who knows about that type of stuff will look at this and go, wow, what a piece of junk. I don't know. Here's the inside. 2 gigantic magnets in there. But you can see right here, this wire was broken. And as a result, what happened was this wire that comes down through here, I don't know why it's so long. This is one of those which came first, the chicken or the egg situation, where when I pulled it apart, this wire was actually outside. It was no longer down in there. It was outside, so as a result, it caught the magnet, ripping it. Last thing, I don't know if this broke first, this connection right here broke, causing it to pop out, and then it snagged, or if it somehow came out just enough, because there's so much slack down here, to snag on the magnet, and then it ripped. Either way, like I said, chicken or the egg, I don't know which came first in this situation, but I put a bead of solder on it, and before anyone says that's not going to work, temperature, blah, 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 the melting point of solder is like 350 plus degrees. There's no way this pump is running at 350 degrees. If it is, I've got a whole host of other problems that are more important than the stupid pump. But that's why I had all that smoke, is I basically pushed a ton of oil through the seals on both my turbos because I had no way to drain the oil out of it. So we're just pumping oil into it. Thank God it happened in the driveway. I was able to basically get the car lined back up. And then shanghaied my wife into helping me push it back into a driveway once I had it lined up, or in the garage, I'm sorry. So I've already tested this. Like I said, the only reason I'm pulling this apart and making this video now is because well, I lost my train. This was backwards. I put it together backwards. So my hoses weren't long enough, and this was pointing in the wrong direction to go back to the oil pan, so just had to rotate this around. So I'm gonna put it all back together, but because I have had this back together already, testing this, I have confirmed it works perfectly fine. I opened this up to make sure there was nothing in the actual pump that could have physically jammed it up. The teeth in here look fantastic. Almost no sign of wear whatsoever. I would imagine that any heat that's being generated by this pump is probably minimal because it's a quite large pump and it says it only draws 7 amps of electricity, so it's pretty low. So the only thing really heating this pump up is the oil, and that oil is nowhere near 350 degrees needed to melt this solder. Now, if it fails again and I open it up and find that the solder is melted, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, this is the most affordable option, which is free, basically. I had solder laying around. I popped a few fuses testing this out. It now is working fine. So since the fuses were laying around, I didn't even have to buy fuses. In the foreseeable future, if this does happen again, I think what's going to happen is the turbo kit will get rebuilt. These turbos will be moved up a little bit higher, just enough so that the gravity can do its job to get the oil back to the pan. If I'm doing that, these downpipes won't work, which is fine. I would rather move them anyways. I got to ignore the dissimilar metals there. It gets the job done, who cares? But what I would like to do is probably move this wastegate. They have the exact same problem on the other side. So I'd have to do it double. Turbos would have to go higher. This wastegate would probably get a turn right here. I'd probably chop it, put a 45 and have it point forward, since there's nothing gonna sit right here even when the nose is on. And then I could bring the downpipe back down here and have it come out right here. And since I already have all this extra tubing that runs the exhaust all the way back there, it wouldn't cost me a penny. Everything I have is already here. I would just have to chop it up and reuse it. I guess the one thing I would have to buy is whatever this is. What is that? One and a quarter, 1.5. I don't know. But just a 90-degree bend, and then I'd cut it in half for 2 45s, and I'd do the same thing on both sides. So that would be the total expenditure financially to do that. It would just be a matter of labor, which I have nothing but free time usually. So that's not that big of a deal. But anyways, just wanted to make this update video so you guys don't think that I'm lying or trying to sell some junky pump when I tell people it works great. It did work great until whatever happened here happened. But I have confirmed that this solder connection that I did, everything works good. I ran the pump for a while, completely dry, had no problems. And it wasn't until hours later when I decided, hey, I'm gonna go back out, work on the car, hook all the oil lines up. and then start the car and try to burn off all the oil that's soaked in my exhaust system. God, I'm not looking forward to smelling that. It's not going to be fun. But when I tried to hook the lines up, realized I'd put the bottom backwards. So that's why I'm like, well, I'll take it apart tomorrow. And in that meantime, I realized, oh, I can make a video showing the honest truth about this pump. So hope this video helped you either make your decision to get this pump or not get this pump. It's entirely up to you. I have thought about putting like some, I don't even know what, if it would be JB weld or something, just to hold, something non-conductive to hold these wires in place. Because this one seems incredibly long. I mean, you got slack here, it comes all the way down here. Yeah, it's, you know, you can see it jiggling in there. All the other wires are tight. Why is this one loose? I don't know. So maybe I can bend it down here just to eat up some of the slack. I don't know. Something that's going to take two hands. I'm not going to try to do it while I'm holding the phone. But anyways, just wanted to make the video real quick. I'm not going to film me putting it back together because it's literally just sliding the pieces back together. If you've never seen, you know, I mean, you saw where the pump was when I first pulled it off, so you know how it's hooked up. You can look up my video of the installation on this pump. Very simple. But anyways, that's the update on this pump. Hope that helps you make or break your decision on whether you go with this pump or not. So I'll see you for the next one. Well, after filming that last segment of the video, I pushed the car out into the driveway, fired it up. Oil pump seemed to be doing all good. Within 60 seconds, started getting a lot of smoke from the exhaust, then started seeing a pool of oil in both exhaust pipes. Put my hand on the pump. I wasn't feeling anything. You can't hear it running when the engine's running. Shut the car off, left the pump on, and with the engine off, you could clearly hear the pump was doing absolutely nothing. It turns out that after it sat for a few seconds, after shutting the engine off, it came back on, ran a couple seconds, then shut off. Was off for a few seconds, ran for a couple seconds, then shut off. I hit it with a hammer. It ran for half a second, then shut off. Long story short, that pump is done. So with that said, I have to make the decision. Do I buy a new pump and assume that the failure of this pump was a freak accident? Or is the pump junk and the idea of running that pump is bad? I'm kind of leaning towards the latter. I'm going to take some measurements, and I think I'm going to end up lifting these turbos up. I can probably go up about 3 inches, maybe 4 inches. We'll find out when, you know, I put the nose back on, get some measurements. I won't have to change the cold piping if I come straight up. I will have a little bit of clearance, but I got some wiggle room right here. So realistically, it's not going to be a factor. Worst case scenario, I trim it right here, and this whole thing shifts forward a couple of inches, which will, you know, help with the clearance right here. So it's not gonna be a problem. Don't have to do any of the cold side piping. You know, like I mentioned earlier in the video, it'll give me a chance to run the exhaust out in front of the tire. I really don't like having the exhaust where it's at, coming out over here. I think that helps contribute to the drone that's inside the vehicle. I'm sure it's gonna drone like hell considering the motor is solidly mounted and the interior has no panels of any kind. It's just a tin can, but I think it'll help keeping more of the exhaust away from the firewall. And since I have to tear everything apart to redo it, here we go. You can see it even made milkshake, probably because it was a cold start on E85. So probably a lot of exhaust coming down the exhaust pipe as it was warming up, plus the aeration. But paper towels back in the exhaust. Yeah, engine ran flawlessly, but there's just oil puking everywhere. So I think I'm done with the scavenger pump, which is weird because I ran for many years a scavenger pump on an 07 F-150 that had a rear mounted turbo, never had a single problem. That was a daily driver, whereas this car is a 200 mile a year car. So kind of disappointed that it didn't last very long. Again, I still think it's a freak accident that it died in the way it did. But honestly don't want to take the chance again. I mean, just to give you an idea, this is something I did. I ended up, this is the ground for the pump, because when I had it grounded in the original location, it kept popping fuses. And it took a ground that extensive to get it to stop. And that should be an indication that something else is wrong other than just that busted wire. So again, I still think it's a freak accident, but I'm not going to take the chance. I'm going to redo the turbo kit with the turbos higher up. That way I don't have to rely on a scavenge pump, and I can let gravity, which is free and works all the time, unlike that electric pump. Buying a new pump would cost money, and I have to hope it doesn't fail, because if it does, I have this problem again where gravity is never going to fail. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if I'll film the rebuild. I'll probably do a video showing some of it, but it won't be as extensive as the other videos I've done. But anyways, there's your follow-up video that a lot of people have asked for. The pump is dead and it's not getting replaced.